Hey, today let's talk about step number one. Step number 1 of 5 for building a healthy nutrition plan that will help you to reverse prediabetes while eating healthy food that tastes good. Step number 1 of 5, eat sufficient protein. And you might be saying, hold on, Dr. Topher, eat sufficient protein. I've heard this before. Is there going to be anything new in this message for me? And I'm really hopeful that there will. I would like to ask you 2 questions before you decide you've already heard everything before. Number 1 is, do you know why eating sufficient protein is so important? And number 2, do you know how to determine whether you are getting sufficient protein in your own diet? So number 1, why is protein important? We know protein in the body serves a lot of functions, mainly related to structure, building things like bones, tendons, ligaments, and for us, importantly, muscle. Muscle being so important because it helps to regulate blood sugar. In terms of function, things like antibodies, things like enzymes that help your body to function at its best. So we know protein is important. 2 main reasons for us. Number 1 is that as women go through menopause, we know that muscle mass decreases. Hormones change, they allow fat mass to increase, allow muscle mass to decrease. And we know that consuming sufficient protein is one of 2 key things that you can do to support your muscle mass, to help to minimize muscle loss, or hopefully, potentially, to gain muscle. Number 2 is that protein helps you to feel full. Protein produces satiety, and when we are talking about trying to lose fat, trying to restrict calories or energy or not overconsume energy, we know that protein can help us to feel more full, to battle off cravings, and hopefully to reach our goals. So how do you know? Question number 2, how do you know if you're getting sufficient protein? So let's think about targets. In terms of overall energy or overall calories, our goal in general in this program is not to have you track or count everything. My personal view is that for most people, this can be hard to sustain over the long term. But tracking or counting or taking an audit of where you are right now can be a very useful tool. And we know that when people consume 20% or maybe a little bit more, maybe up to 25 or even 30% of energy or calories from protein, they tend to feel more full and tend to have more success with weight loss. So about 20%, maybe 25% of calories from protein. For most of you, that's going to work out to be about 60 or 80 grams of protein per day. A little bit more is okay. Some people really find that they do well with 100 or 120 grams, particularly if you are particularly athletic. But more protein can be okay. But 60 to 80 grams, that's about 20 to 30 grams per meal. And so a very simple goal, and this would be what I would encourage you to do, is to simply try to include quality protein with each meal. Quality protein with each meal. And so what are great sources of quality protein? Well, we all think about things like, fish or lean beef or chicken or other forms of meat, and those are great. Lots of plants and plant-based protein. So everything that comes from the soy world, tofu, tempeh, beans or other legumes, nuts and seeds are great for protein. Whole grain actually has a fair amount of protein. Eggs in particular, you might look for these things called omega-3 enriched eggs, but eggs are a great source of protein. Even dairy, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese are a couple personal favorites. Or you can even use things like protein powder, in particular whey protein powder, to be able to supplement your protein. On this page, you can look down below. There's a pancake recipe that uses protein powder that I encourage you to check out. So what would this look like? What would be some practical examples? So in this program, we talk about this idea of something called the nudge or the upgrade. How can we go from where we are to where we want to be, knowing it doesn't have to be perfect, and knowing if we stack these little improvements on top of each other, we can make progress. So classic breakfast, pancakes and syrup. Pancakes and syrup, maybe with some orange juice. Very carbohydrate rich, not a lot of protein. What could we do with this? Well, an example of nudging or upgrading this might be to look at that protein pancake recipe. So maybe you substitute protein pancakes, perhaps a little bit of Greek yogurt and some berries. We'll talk about fiber for step number 2, but add some berries and maybe some chopped nuts on the top would be one way to take that very close to 0 protein meal and make it a protein-rich meal. How about lunchtime? Again, classic lunch might be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And yes, peanut butter has protein, about 8 grams for 2 tablespoons. So it's got protein, but not necessarily a ton. So if you had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a banana, again, not getting a lot of protein, we could take that same sandwich and make it a turkey and cheese sandwich. So 3 ounces of turkey breast, about 29 grams of protein. So now we're hitting that target for that meal. If we wanted to reduce the carbs, we could even nudge or upgrade that by making it a lettuce wrap and perhaps having some nuts alongside. You know, dinner time, often ripe for upgrades. Most of us tend to consume more protein at dinner. We think about the main event at the dinner. The main dish will often be protein rich. But I would encourage you to think about trying some different protein sources. Maybe look at something that you don't typically consume, and yeah, just be free to experiment. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, what I'm hoping after this is that you will just start to notice what you are eating, and you will look for examples to build your meal around protein, that you'll look to have that quality protein with each meal. So that's it for right now. Stay tuned. Step number 2 and all the other steps are up and coming. Glad you're here. As always, wish you peace. Take care.